it's funny. I don't overly prepare for these. You and I talked about it. It's like going for we call it the walk, because it's like going for a walk. I know there's things I want to talk about, but I got to tell you, David, when I started digging into your background, and I knew a little bit about you before you and I got connected several weeks ago. It's like, where do I start? You've done so much in this industry. Give us a 30-45 second kind of rundown of the David Lykken bio. I mean, I could sit here and say several companies you started, a technology and LOS that went public that you originally started, technology platforms, consulting, coaching, podcasting. Give us the quick elevator pitch.
Well, I think the thing is I'm inquisitive. I like asking. I ask a lot of questions. I'm a get her done guy, but while I'm getting something done, which isn't, by the way, my favorite thing to do, I like hiring people to get her done. That's what my skill set is. And then I spend my time looking at how we could do things better, differently. And I am pretty good at coming up with ideas. And so when I started out my career, I started my career in 1973. So I've been in the industry for 47 years. So it's a long, long time ago. And when I started out, I started looking at parts of the business that I did not enjoy and go, why can't we automate more of this? And a Boeing engineer was up in Seattle, gave me a Heathkit computer. And I said, what does this do? He says, it's a future of computing. It's a microcomputer. You're going to learn all about this. They're coming. And I said, it types, it stores data, it calculates, and all this stuff that a computer does. And I started playing with it. I'm a music major. I'm not even a business major. So I started playing with the concepts of it because I love creating. And so I created this concept. Out of that came an LOS. Out of that came a whole lot of painful lessons about how not to raise capital, because I went out and got venture capital. I thought it turned out to be vulture capital, ended up working for my own idea. I consulted to it. I watched it grow. One of my clients ended up coming and buying it. It went public. I was a part of the journey for a bit of that. But they knew what they were doing. And that's where my lack of knowledge of, at that point, how the public markets work, how you took companies public. I mean, when you don't have that knowledge, someone else does, and they don't value the creator of the product, and they don't have the vision. They're just looking at capitalizing on someone else's idea, and they exit. So when they exited, one of my clients bought it for $1.3 billion. Do you know how painful it is, Eric and Thomas, to sit in and watch a check for $1.3 billion go across the table for something that you created in your garage? And by that time, I'm totally out. I spoke it. I helped coordinate that thing. So moments like that. So, I mean, when I realized you got good ideas, and you need to start, paying attention to those to start working. And so I've applied that throughout my whole career. I like hiring strong people to do what I don't like to do. And that's the get her done part. It's got to get done. So we all got to agree that the get her done part's got to get done. My career has really been a journey of finding people to take care of the necessary parts that I don't enjoy doing, so I can spend on doing what I enjoy doing. That's really what it is.
There's so much packaged into what you just said. I'm curious about the experience on the VC side, especially if that was your first experience. And
it was.
I think people hear about those super high level, but they don't hear the stories of what it was like to package the presentation, to go to market, to start the process of raising capital, the excitement of having raised the capital, or you thought you did, and then how things then change from there. The other thing that you said was, at some point you must have realized that for you to be in the best position to do all of the things that you just said, you probably had to then assume some additional risk, because a guy like you could have just, and I say just in quotes, I mean, you could have just remained an executive with some really great financial services companies, made a really nice living, put money away, retired someday, and spent 10 hours in your gym working out if that's what you wanted to do. But I talk about that progression a little bit. Was there a moment where you said to yourself, I can't wait for others. I gotta just assume the risk and do it myself?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the definition of an entrepreneur. I always applaud, and I've always been a bit frustrated with myself that I wasn't one of those guys that could just sit at the company for 34 years, collect the paycheck, and have that wonderful life at the end, the quote unquote wonderful life. And when I really tried to force myself into that, it's like putting on a suit coat that doesn't fit. The short sleeves are too short. It doesn't button. And have you ever tried on something that doesn't fit and how uncomfortable you are versus something you go like, this is just so comfortable, whether it be shoes or what. That's how I felt when I tried to be something other than what I believe I'm called to do. Now, called to do has a higher purpose sense of that, and I do have that stronger sense. But what for me, it is, I would have been miserable. I would have died an early death if I had tried to do that. I think we are all designed to do things in a certain way. And if we would live with we would pursue our original design and work with that, you're going to be working with your flow of how you're wired, and find others that flow in ways that complement you, and you're going to live well. So I'm an entrepreneur. Yeah, I take risks. I've taken more risks than you can possibly imagine. And I'm married into a family that are non-risk takers. They're all educators. They stayed at the same university, taught there all their lives. My wife family looks at me like I've got one eye right here in the middle. I'm a cyclops. Well, who is this? Why did you bring him into this family? We're all educated. We're all this. And whatever, we're married 36 years, so it's worked. So bottom line is, I think find out who you are. And I think that's the most painful part. Stop being someone else.
Well, find out who you are and find out who are those around you as well, and who it is that you're working with. I mean, it is I think the challenge in life and in business and whatever else. I love your analogy of putting on the clothes and knowing when it fits and when it doesn't fit. I think we also, though, as human beings, spend a lot of time seeing what other people are doing and thinking that the shirt that fits them should be the same shirt that fits us. So we put it on. We like the way the shirt looks on the rack. There's only one size. Maybe I can fit into a medium, but I'm probably more of a large. So I put the medium on, and it kind of fits, but it kind of doesn't. But I'm willing to write it off because I really like the shirt. And how much time we spend wasting wearing this shirt that doesn't fit until we finally realize I need to go get another shirt. Our industry is, mortgage banking, I think, is like that a lot. Where and I want to get into this with you because I know that on the consulting side of what you do, you follow specific processes, and those processes, like what we do, those are processes of discovery, but that's a two-way street, right? Before you know who it is you want. So to your point, to hire to go do the go get her done stuff, you have to know who you are first. And you have to know who your organization is across specific core components so that you can match those up with the individuals that you want to partner with. Talk to me a little bit about your processes in consulting with institutions and how you coach around those things.
Well, first of all, one of the biggest things I have is you can't get to where you want to go unless you first locate where you're at. It's a GPS system. If you have no coordinates on where you're at, and yet you want to get to some other destination, a goal, objective, you can't lay out an actionable plan to get there unless you first identify where you're at and what those. So it's getting to know yourself, knowing how you're wired, what you love to do, what gives you life, what sucks life out of you. And then, so that's part of getting to know where you're at, getting to know where your knowledge level is, know where you're at in the career path. Where you're at. Sometimes there was times in my life it was frustrating as heck. I just had to sit and gut it through because I had to gain knowledge. That's just learning. It's like learning golf or something, which I've been learning golf for 48 years.
I don't think we ever
50
stopped
years.
learning golf.
I mean, that's one of those sports that it's probably 60 years. I'm 70 years old. So I've been playing golf all my life, but I'm still learning. And I just don't have golf genes. So I'm always having to work at it. But I'm better at it when I do work at train. There's times where you just go in there and you go hit balls. And it's not as much fun as being out there riding around with your friends, drinking a beer, smoking a cigar, and swinging at the ball and having some great conversation. It's work. So I think there comes those times where you do have to recognize there's seasons in your life where you have to just roll up your sleeves, put your head down, say, I am going to get through it. No different than college, getting into college, the testing you have to do. There's just some things you have to do in life. So I think that's the first thing. I help clients, first of all, identify where they're at. It's amazing to me, Eric, how many people don't want to learn or recognize where they're at.
Why do you think that is? Do you think it's too hard? What's the problem?
Well, I think they're trying, first of all, I think they're trying to be someone else. And then they go, no. I don't need to know who I am. I want to find, and so I've helped, Casey Crawford, Movement Mortgage, big name in the industry, Googled how to start a mortgage company. That video is out all over the internet. We get more business off of that video. I still advise Casey's, or texting him this morning earlier. You have this, I want to be like Casey. I want to go do what Casey does. Well, you're not wired like Casey. Can we work with you? Let's work with you. You're a lot different than Casey. Well, make me like Casey. Make me do that, because I want to have that kind of success. That is someone you can't work with. You try, I'll spend time with them for a season. And then I finally realized, this may be another season for us to come back together. And when you beat your head, go run that out and fall off a few cliffs and come back, and assuming you survive all that rabbit trail you're going to be going on and another round trip around the mountain, when you come back, I'm willing to, but you got to be teachable. And I think that's the biggest challenge. So I think one thing is being teachable. Someone else is trying to be someone that they're not. Here's the other thing. Oftentimes, I love Brene Brown on teaching on shame. More people associate something in themselves they don't like, and they're ashamed of it. You got to get past that. You've got to embrace the shame. And if you haven't listened to Brene Brown, go out, Brene Brown, on Google her on TED Talks. You're nodding your head, so you know who she is. Powerful person. When we get past shame, for example, I had dyslexia. I didn't know what dyslexia was. I went through college. All I knew is I didn't enjoy reading. And it wasn't until we had our youngest daughter, and she had dyslexia. She was having trouble learning to read. My wife, we brought in a consultant, how about that? A consultant bring in another consultant. Smart people will bring in consultants, I believe, because what you don't know. So we brought in this person. She looked at and sat down and visited us. Really wise, excellent, mature person. She looked at me and she says, "You and your daughter are identically the same. Have you ever been tested for dyslexia?" I go, what? My wife's an educator, so she knew what that was. I didn't have any idea. She says, "Do you see numbers? You enjoy reading?" I go, "No, I like listening. My auditory retention is so much better." That's why I started a podcast, was because I wanted to learn things. My auditory retention is so much stronger than my reading retention.
Did you play music by ear? You didn't.
Yeah. I'll play
music.
Yeah. Nope. That was the hardest thing I had to learn, because I'm a music major. So I had to force myself into music theory and doing all that. But what I do is I can hear harmonies. I can play them. I had pretty close to perfect pitch. And so you hand me a sheet of music and I could go in to a studio and I could do it. But I loved improvising. And so jazz music to this day, which is, I think, probably some of the most gifted musicians are in the jazz arena, because they just show up. They're the artists. When they're gifted artists, I should say. Some would say some might not be as appreciate the musician quality there, but they're artists. They can get together and they just hear and feel, and there's a vibe. They come together. It's magical when you see a great jazz group come together and perform. And some of the music, it just happens. You got to, like this, you can turn on the recorder and let it run, because you don't know what's going to happen next.
Right.
And so those are moments. So getting back to what I think the key is, my key to my success has been, first of all, getting past my own shame. I don't like to read. I was embarrassed about it. I couldn't add up a column of numbers and get the same answer twice. That's not good when you're in finance. So I learned to surround myself. There's a funny story about that, how I almost got fired because I couldn't do that, but I was a top salesperson, so they didn't want to fire me. So they were on the process of firing me until someone gave them the idea to hire strong assistants. He's such a good person at sales. Go let him operate in his strength. Hire strong people that have good number skills. And they go like, yeah, that's like duh. Why did we think of that? So, I mean, that's where I learned it in the process about I didn't realize getting this close to being fired, but the compliance people, I was driving them crazy because they look at my numbers and go, who added this up? He's a college grad? You can't be serious. They didn't understand the learning disability. I didn't understand. So there's a lot of shame around that. So when you overcome your shame, you accept who you are and you recognize, you go, hey, that may not be Casey Crawford. It may not be, pick your favorite person in mortgage lending or that you admire the most, but I'm uniquely me. Let's figure out what we can do with uniquely me. And that's what I love doing. I love consulting. And that's when I met with you, Eric. You do this with your business. You are out there with your business. You have technology. And I just so excited to have you on the podcast to talk about how you identify those uniquenesses and how you bring that together and finding the right fit. It's a puzzle. And so it's so rewarding to put the right piece in the right place. And then that's what you do. And you do it very skillfully and made a very good living at it. More people.
No, thank you. And I love every time I ask you a question, I love it because the passion just kicks in. Like you're so full of energy and passion and also wisdom from making mistakes and seeing others make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. Going back to Casey for a second. So I don't know Casey well, but Casey and I know each other. I've been to the facility. I wanted to hit the CrossFit gym with him when we were there once.
Just don't let Michelle do it with you because she'll kick you.
Oh, no, sir. If I do, I'm scaling everything and the clock's not running when I'm going if Michelle's anywhere near.
That's his wife. For those that don't know, that's Michelle. She's a CrossFit touch.
She was one of the original. Funny story about that one. Years ago, I don't even think Movement was Movement yet. I think they were still called New American. It was not long after he and Toby partnered. Okay. Yeah. But they were up and coming. People knew who they were. And I told Nikki, my wife, that I was headed to Charlotte to have a meeting with this company that was expanding. And I knew one of the senior managers, but I was getting introduced to Casey. And I said who it was. And I said, yeah, this guy played football in the NFL. And somehow Nikki said, wait, is his wife named Michelle? Now, we were big CrossFitters at the time. Okay. Like I say big CrossFitters. We were CrossFitting. We were working out. Nikki was really into the games and who was competitive. She knew who Michelle was. So I remember when I first met Casey, I said, hey, you might be pretty popular in your industry, but let me tell you, my wife has no idea who you are, but she knows exactly who your wife is. So Michelle crushes it. But what I was getting at was,
great story.
It's also more challenging, I think, today with what you just described about someone saying, I want to do what they're doing. Mm-hmm. I think maybe, I'm curious to get your take.
A lot of imitators.
Well, because years ago, we didn't have social media. We weren't seeing people post on LinkedIn. We weren't seeing Instagram. We weren't seeing Facebook posts. So much of the marketing now is integrated with social media platforms. So I see Casey in my face every day if I so choose. And who is Casey? He's a good-looking guy that was in the NFL that wears cool clothes and is surrounded by people with ink and cool haircuts. And so, you look at that and you might say, I want to be that. You had Bill Cosgrove on the show not that long ago. There's a whole nother segment that might look at Bill and look at his company and say, I want to do what they're doing. UWM's in the news like crazy right now. Some people might say, I want to be as aggressive as Matt is. But I think that also then creates more of a challenge maybe for someone like you when someone's built this image of who they want to be through social media, because they don't know who Casey is. They don't know who Matt is. They don't know who Bill Cosgrove is. I'm assuming that's a challenge you have to try to overcome.
Right. We worked through that. First of all, I keep getting back. It says Casey's persona is taken. Bill Cosgrove, I love that brother. I love all these guys. Is taken. I've worked with Matt, and Matt is just amazing. I worked with his dad. I consulted his dad before Matt got in the business. So so I had the privilege of sitting down with Matt here recently in his office. I love his competitive side. Who Matt is taken. Who's Bill is taken. Find out who you are. Try to stop imitating someone else, and let's start with who you are, and let's build a business model around you and your uniqueness, and you're going to have a lot more fun, and you're most likely going to be a lot more successful.
Do you consult in other industries as well, or is it primarily real estate finance?
It has been mostly real estate finance. Interestingly, I'm getting into the medical profession. Really? I'm consulting to the Gapin Institute in Sarasota, Florida. Dr. Gapin created this. I'm 70 years old. I'm looking at he's got a 2.0 male 2.0 VIP program, which is, it's not just a inject tea and take a bunch of testosterone. It's a full balance. How do you have longevity? I'm interested in longevity. I want to live to 120.
Is he kind of an anti-aging?
He's an anti-aging guy. He works on health and a lot of things and how to work with men And so it's male 2.0 and doing it a very holistic using the latest science. And it is an amazing program. So we started talking about this and he asked me what I do. And I said, I'm a consultant. And so it turns out I said, hey, have you thought about this? He says, what's your specialty? I said, well, I just think process and I'm always looking at how things could be done better. So we advanced in the whole thing. Now I'm fully consulting to him and I'm on his board of directors. So that's happening. I got another doctor who says, you're doing it for him. Let me do this there's another medical group. So who knows? I mean, you start a journey, Eric, you just start walking and you don't know when you're in the mountains, if you're going to go up and where that's going to take you around the bend to a grizzly or take you down to a really nice meadow where you and your wife get to go swimming and taking a swim. I was going to say skinny back out in the mountains. But that might
we have no sponsors we're going to upset.
You can, and that part creates a wonderful memory. So one can be a tragic memory and one can be a very wonderful memory. So which way do you go on the turn? And I think this is what's so fun is start walking and moving, get out there and move and see where it goes. And then have someone who is like a drone flying above you, can look at the landscape and say, hey, drone, hey, consultant, should I go right or left? And the drone looks down and goes, there's a bear over there eating some berries. Let's avoid him. Let's go down down to this little pond and let's enjoy the beauty down there. And there's another path up to where you want to go. So I think that's what it's surrounding yourself with counsel. In the multitude of counselors wage war, and business can be viewed as war. You're competing, you're going out there. So I believe there's the importance of having a multitude of counselors. And that's what you guys do. I love your business. I love your business model because it's about people, finding the right people. That's why I think instantly we connected.
And we live in the nuance, which is, I think, what I really like about the industry that is our foundation. Now, on the technology side, we're going into other industries as well, because what we've built is absolutely transferable.
I love it.
From a human capital perspective and where we provide our consult, our support, our relationship building, it is mortgage banking specific at the moment. One of the things that I've always loved about it the last 20 plus years has been I don't think I even realized it early on, but I know now, it is the nuance. It's the things that happen outside of the margins that help you identify what you were talking about earlier, which is who are you as an organization, which if you can tell me that, I can then help you identify and attract the individual opportunities that are going to help you expand and grow your local market, your regional, your market, your company as a whole. But I asked you the question about other industries because I wonder, as a consultant, what disciplines do you feel like are obviously transferable across industries when it comes to those processes?
Good question. Actually, especially as you're considering what you're doing. Think about it. What's the one common denominator that's in every business? People. Well, so your business is so easily transportable. And I just wonder, I think it's awesome that you're going into other vertical markets. And here's why there's a value to that. First of all, what we learn in mortgage lending has a unique nuance, to use that word. You change that in, like what I'm doing is going into the medical industry. And I'm going, well, that's completely different. I have no qualifications. I'm not a doctor. I've never managed a medical facility in my life. Why do I? But I'm learning some principles I've learned here come there, fit nicely in there. And to the point now where we're getting a fair amount of traction. So I think what is pursuable. Another one is process. I love Marcus Lemonis, The Prophet on CNBC, one of my favorite programs out on CNBC that I look at. He talks about his people, process, and product. The product may vary from vertical market to vertical market, but the people and the process by which we go about it, that doesn't change. I mean, having a good process, I mean, it's obviously a different process for medicine versus mortgage lending, but it's still a process. So how do you create the process? How do you engineer a process? And that's what we bring to the table. You bring to the table when you're hiring people. These are the factors that you need to bring in together. And I have so many. I can't wait for our podcast. Yeah, I'm interviewing you on Monday. Again, now we're going to turn the table.
You're going to have a problem because I think I've only got about 20 minutes, and you've gotten to know me well enough that is when talking to me, that can become a problem. Well, so go back to industries, comparing the industries, and I love your answer around people, process,
And product. Yep. Mm-hmm.
But mortgage banking, and I'm sure other industries as well, they're so wildly cyclical. One of the things I've communicated a lot here recently, not only to the organizations that we partner with, but the individuals that may be open to exploring options, is that whatever you did in 2020,
right,
a large portion of that was not because of anything that you did. It was market driven. You rode the wave, and there's nothing wrong with that. Congratulations. Yep. Hopefully you saved your money more than you did pre-2008, and you were smart with it, and you're making investments back into the organization or personally into your retirement savings or whatever. However, now we're kind of getting on the other side of that thing. And if you weren't doing the blocking and tackling in 2020, if you weren't paying attention to people, process, and product, probably more process than anything else, though.
Exactly right.
That you're probably going to have a problem. What are you seeing right now with those and you don't need to name names, but with organizations that you're supporting that maybe concern you, considering the market that we're now entering?
Well, I think we're too busy to improve our process because we're so busy. In other words, your current success is your biggest enemy to successfully moving into the future. Your current success is your biggest enemy to moving into the future. And I see what I see is we're so busy. Yeah, we'll take a look at our process. We'll refine our processes later. And the other part of this, we can't find people. We can't hire enough people. There are a ton of people out there that want to work. You're saying to me, I have to have this. So everyone puts it in a box. I need to have this kind of person. Well, why not go outside the box and look at bringing them in and do the training and bringing them in? What's your program for training? And I think that's one of the things Bill Cosgroves is doing phenomenally well. His one of the most successful companies out there, Union Home Mortgage, is one of the most successful companies at bringing in and recruiting people out of college, bringing them into the business. And through Alice's training program that she does, having them come in and become very successful mortgage bankers. And so I think what I get concerned about as we look, and I'm probably getting off from your question, but people are too busy to focus on their process. You should, that's right there tells me you're too busy to succeed in the future. And when you try to play catch up, people are moving so fast on process, the successful companies, that you're going to be playing catch up. So start working on process now. Second thing is the belief that there's just not enough people or I have to pay top dollar for people. Why don't you raise up some people?
Yeah. And it goes even deeper than that. You know Rosemary David.
Sure. Yes. Okay.
So I was at Suncadia years ago, and we did a 101, a presentation in front of her company. This was, again, probably 6-7 years ago. And she told a story at the end of us communicating best practices around, quote, recruiting, which we'll talk about that on Monday, maybe.
Good.
I don't particularly like that word, but I haven't been able to come up with a better word for what we do. And she said that when she first started in the industry as a manager growing a market, so I think she went from loan officer to branch manager to now go grow this market. What she started trying to spend 4 or 5 hours a day, quote, recruiting, and she was failing miserably. And I think that Harkavy or somebody at Building Champions was coaching her, and they basically gave her good advice, which was you're spending too much time on it. You need to be more focused and spend less time. And so she did. So she made a goal of building relationships with 1 or 2 new people a month. That was it. And she said eventually what she figured out was the ones that she built a relationship with 12 months ago were now joining her company. They wanted to work with her, not because she recruited them, but because they got to know her, like her, trust her, and finally figure out we can do more together than we can separately. And the putting a ribbon on it, what she said was she figured out that after that period of time, she never recruited again, because what she was doing was just simply building relationships that eventually came back around. So in any market, she was able to continue to build her team because she's never stopped relationship building. So one other thought, now I'll be quiet. This is one of the things we coach with companies. Think of a loan officer right now, because all heads of production can relate to how they train LOs, but sometimes they can't relate to how they're going to grow their organization from building up, recruiting people that have transferable books of business and don't need a job. because that's really who it is you're trying to recruit. Well, if you're a $20 million, or let's say you're a $100 million loan officer in 2020, and my son, Abe, gets into mortgage banking as a newbie, and he's doing nothing but what? He's calling on builders, agents, CPAs, divorce attorneys, all the old school stuff that you did 10 years ago when you first got into the business. Well, he might have a real hard time in 2020 getting loans from those people, but he's getting some. But while you're chasing refis and getting all the low-lying fruit, guess who picked up market share in 2021? It's Abe. It's the 20-year-old that didn't know what he was doing. So I think that's part of what you're talking about, is the success is blinding you from the blocking and tackling that's going to help you maintain a sustainable business.
Yeah, we chase the lower fruit. We get so satisfied plucking the lower fruit, and then we're learning how that fruit is going to not be there. And if you don't know how to crawl a ladder and get to the higher fruit, and it's a little more work, a little more difficult. And there's people that just have a real unique discipline. By the way, you mentioned Bill Hart, love his coaching. There's so many wonderful coaches, but there's not many coaches on the operational side. So what we do is we coach on the operational side. It seemed like it wasn't as crowded, and there's a huge opportunity there. It doesn't pay as well as coaching on the operational side, on the sales side of it, but we're making a difference. And that's what I love partnering with you on. I'm really excited about our partnering together on that. There's so many good points you raised up in that, what you were just saying, that we could go on, but not sure how much more time we have, and I want to be respectful of that.
No, well, I got to be respectful to your time, because Thomas and I could go on for a while.
You can edit that out, Tom. So.
Well, so stick on that maybe for just a second. Yeah. So another thing that came up recently on a episode that I did with Casey at Zenix.
Oh yeah, I love Casey. Yeah, I listened to that one. Yeah.
And it was a great conversation around how
people
involved in our industry, from loan officer to branch manager and so on and so forth, and the challenge that exists, similar to the story that you were telling about yourself, where you were a great sales guy, but you were disrupting everything in the back room, so to speak, and you had a good enough leader who identified your skill and your strength and said, well, let's play to his strength and not try to fire him because of his weakness. Casey talks about this a little bit with how we've sort of just built this muscle in the industry that if you're a really good LO, the only other place for you to go is to be a branch manager. And the reality is most of them shouldn't be branch managers.
Exactly right.
Do you come across that a lot when you're consulting with mortgage companies on elevating their people on the sales side?
Yeah, I mean, they promote to someone's ineptness, and then it's just really tragic to see what happens. They really destroy what I think could be a really exciting story. And what they do is they fail to cast vision for the greater things that they could do within their skill set, rather than I went through that same thing. I was an okay manager, but I was really good at getting out and getting business. And then, so you develop that. So there's other people that may be mediocre as loan officers, but they make phenomenal branch managers because they're really good. What's a good branch manager do? Develops people. A good manager is a developer of people. Whereas a top salesperson, they probably have a pretty strong sanguine or choleric approach, where they mean that it's all about me first. And if I have time, I'll train you. Whereas a good branch manager is, I can get to my stuff. Let me train you. Let me build you up. So I think we have to be careful that we don't promote people because they want something, because it's an image. And I'll never forget, there are times where you need to move through positions to develop yourself. So I think that's fine. I had to go in and literally go into operations for a period of time. They go, Dave, we need to develop you as an executive now. So I went and I became a DE underwriter. That was the most painful thing in the world. And so the process, they pushing me through operations, and I am so grateful for that experience, because today I consult from those hard things. You said the thing, what can you teach more effectively? Something that comes naturally to you, or something that is difficult for you to learn? Everyone assumes, what comes naturally to me is I can teach the best, because it just comes naturally. You people, I had a business partner, Andy Shell, who said, Dave, why did you say that? I said, say what? He said, why when we were in the sales situation, you said this, this, and this. I go, I don't know what was thought. It just came out. I don't know why certain things come out as successfully as they do in sales. But when it comes to operations, when I'm successful in operations, Let me tell you, I can tell you because I had to learn it. I had to go bump around and go through a lot of pain. And in that pain, it developed a process of why we do what we do. And yet with my creative side, I was always able to challenge it. So I think sometimes taking the easy path is not the right path. There are times to develop yourself and go through the easy path. So you go to your strength. But there are times where you have to take a right-hand turn and go into some difficult places to grow as a person and grow as an executive, or grow in as a professional and becoming a future executive in the industry.
Can you think of any big success stories that you've seen that maybe you've been involved in on the consulting side with companies that maybe weren't in the right spot? They were struggling in some way, and they took the advice of not trying to be someone else and taking the time to sit down and do some reflection on who they are as an organization. And then once they did that things really took off. Any stories that you have?
Oh, there's some great ones, and I don't have their permission to use their name, but I wish I could, because so I won't use their names. But there's a couple who tried to be go out and call on realtors and builders, and they went the traditional route, which I still think that's going to be around for a while. Mm-hmm. But they had a natural skill towards technology. They had a natural marketing ability that was just a gift. And we sat and they brought me in and says, we're just really struggling with our business. We see what you get. Again, everyone talks about Casey Crawford, the success that we helped him achieve. And we're just a small part of it. A lot of what he did was a lot of people part of that success story. But the part that we did, they listened to that and they go, can you help us be more successful? We want to be this. We want to go down this. We want to live in this box. And once we did, we located, remember what I said early on in the interview? Once we locate where you're at, we can help you to get to where you should go, or help you go to where you want to get to. Or identify taking a Ferrari on an off-road, how tragic would that be? Taking a Hummer and trying to run it in a Grand Prix would be disastrous. It's going to lose. You put the Hummer in the right environment, or Jeep, it'll take on the roughest terrain. You put a Ferrari or a formula car on a flat surface and run it through a course, it's going to be successful. So what we do is to direct people. So in this particular case, he was trying to be a traditional lender. When I identified his gifts and abilities of marketing and consumer direct, we shifted his focus there. And I wish I could use his name because he is killing it. He dumped being the realtor. He feels badly. He says, I know that's probably where I should be. No, you are using your gifts, and he's killing it. Probably one of the up-and-coming companies, because you look at the demographic shift in who's coming into the market, the first-time home buyers, the millennials, mm-hmm. and the Gen Zers. My daughter's a Gen Z, and she and her husband, newlyweds, already looking at buying their home. How they're going to go about this is not through the realtor, the builder. You're going to connect with that future home buyer through a different experience by connecting with them directly, consumer direct. Then what we're finding those companies. So for example, he's now calling on realtors, a story, the guy that started calling on realtors and builders, shifted over to consumer direct, started generating leads. Guess what? He's now taking those leads back to the builders and bring them, say, hey, I've got some great pre-qualified borrowers that I captured. Would you like to? That one of the realtors, and I would love to name the name because they're a very successful, well-known company in the United States with a big brand. And they go, no, you don't understand it. We're the realtor. Consumers come to us first. And if we like you, we will bring you the lead. And they threw him out. He went over to another company. He goes, I can't believe this. I have real buyers, pre-qualified, ready to go buy. Took it to another realtor in the same community. They go, it's unusual. Most of the time, we're the ones, the buyers are coming through us. This is 10 years ago. So this is before some of the trends started changing and we're seeing more evidence of. And he goes, yeah, I'll try those leads. And he tried the leads. He goes, holy cow, we just had 15 sales that we would not have had as a result of your skill of connecting with consumers. Mm-hmm. So he's now, guess what's interesting? He's back working with builders and realtors because he's bringing them. Now, of the guy that's knocking on the door, hey, I got great rates of programs, come to me and I got great service. Or the guy that's knocking on that realtor door and saying, I've got 15 pre-qualified, ready to buy buyers. Which one is the realtor probably going to be leaning towards?
Right. Right.
I want to add too, you talked about going into a position as DE underwriter to learn the position. We actually, this is 10 years ago, 12 years ago, we had an office next to the corporate office for a company out west. And I think they may have a spot or two in Texas called Del Taco Corporation.
Yeah.
Their fast food place, right? Yeah, Del Taco Corporation.
But by the way, when he says he's not talking about Model Match right now.
No, this is years ago.
It's an old company.
This is pre-Model Match.
Yeah.
And we were next to their corporate headquarters in Orange County. And so I was probably 19, 20 at this time. And we would go outside of the office, and we were right next door, and they shared this little patio with the other.
I think I know exactly, because we used to live in Orange County. What year was that?
This would have been I watched Lehman Brothers building get liquidated.
Okay.
So 2009, 8?
Yeah.
8? It was 8.
Yeah.
And we would share. So this was off Commerce Center in Foothill Ranch.
I know, right? I know exactly where you're at.
Right next to City Hall.
I know exactly where you're at.
We would talk to like the head of marketing. They would all be out there. The CEO sometimes would like make an appearance, and I'd met all these guys, and it was a crazy experience talking to all these heads of just outside, just talking about whatever. And so I made some friends over there that were kind of younger and were part of like their customer service team or whatever, right? And and they would all share with me a part of what they would do when you first got a job there is they had a corporate owned store in Foothill, and you had to work there in the store as all the positions, cashier, behind the counter, cook, mop up, and you had to work there for at least a week.
Yep.
And you had to do all those positions before
you got into the corporate office. Before
you stepped foot in that corporate office.
That's so good.
If you applied for the corporate office job, it was you're going to go to the store for a week. You're going to work all these positions because now you can make better decisions at the corporate office because you know what those folks are going through with whatever job they're tasked.
And there's that gap in mortgage banking, right? Where originators don't really always know what a DE underwriter is dealing with, and the DE underwriter doesn't always necessarily care what the LO is dealing with on the nuance side. I think, not to interrupt you, but that's what you were maybe getting.
Yeah, and that was also just my shout out to Del Taco West Coast.
Are you pushing for a sponsor? You want a Del Taco?
Yeah, go get it. That'll work. Yeah, if you could do
but
that.
That is interesting, David, right? Like a lot of the presidents of mortgage companies that I know and that you know, they did come up through sales, ops, secondary servicing. I think of like a Phil Shoemaker at Home Point. Phil has touched everything. I know. And so he can relate to everybody top to bottom and bottom to top.
That is such a great point. You look at those companies that have been really successful. They are ones that have figured out how to value and appreciate the unique differences. Now, does that mean you have to go be a DE underwriter? Does it mean you have to go process a loan? Casey has never done any of those things. He's been wildly successful. But what he did is he spent time in each of those areas. He immersed himself enough to go figure out what it's necessary so he could recognize the right people. So it's a gaining an appreciation and investing the time and energy into that. That's what Bill Cosgrove does. But it comes back to is recognize where your mainstream of energy, what gives you life, what gives you the greatest sense of satisfaction and purpose, and you stay in that. But make sure you invest in. There's not enough executives that are taking the time to go sit in there. One of my favorite books outside the industry is the Southwest story with the book Nuts. Herb Keller would go in and you would see him working as a flight attendant, going up and down the aisle, serving drinks and handing out something. They go, aren't you the chairman of this airline? You go, yeah. You'd see him working in the baggage claim because he went out and felt and experienced what they were doing. And I don't think there's anything more galvanizing, bringing together of a team to watch the guy that owns the company or is the head of the company go in and sit alongside. Matt Ishby, I'll tell you a Matt Ishby story at UWM. I love this story. We were in there visiting him and he took a break. You know where we found him? We found him working the receptionist desk because he loves talking to his customers. So people calling in and says, I got this situation. And Matt's talking to, sure, what's the situation? We'll route you to the right person. They go, boy, you sound a lot like Matt Ishbia. The caller said, This is Matt Ishbia. You're serious. I'm talking to Matt Ishbia, who owns you. I mean, this person got all wowed out. He says, that's all right. Don't get wowed out. I'm trying to help you. What can we do? And just stayed right on topic and got him focused right in off the thing. But you find guys that are really good leaders that are willing to, again, humble themselves, willing to sit down and learn and work in each one of the disciplines, even if it's just for a short period of time. Matt says, look, and I love going down there and sitting in the reception because I get a sense, a flavor of my finger on the pulse of how our customers are feeling about how we're doing. And there's no better place than do it at the receptionist desk.
And flip it around. So go back to what we were talking about with loan officers progressing to managers and managers progressing to something else. If you're the regional and you're not spending time in that branch, or you're the head of production and you're not traveling around and doing road shows, when that loan officer comes and says, you know, I need more, I'm ready for the next thing. If you don't know who they are and what makes them tick and what they actually want, you're not going to be able to properly consult with them about that next step. And so what do you end up doing? You put a $40 million LO in charge of a branch. You motivate them through compensation that still motivates them to spend more time on their own loans than taking care of those that they're supposed to be bringing up. Right. And so it ultimately isn't even that manager's fault. It's the model of the organization that's created the problem. Hey, I have one more quick question.
Yes.
And then Thomas is going to have some editing to do so he can clip together. we
had about the internet connection. That's so unusual. I got a business connection. It's real high end stuff. So I don't know.
You need to make a phone call after we hang up. That's right. Call customer support. Hey, so quick question. I put a clip on LinkedIn today from a conversation Casey Cunningham and I had, and it was about this topic. It was actually more about culture and leadership, and it was great commentary that Casey gave. And somebody that you and I both know, I don't think he would mind me mentioning his name, Chris Fleming at Water. Chris sent me an email and he said, I love that clip today. And the clip was about choosing leadership properly and then having the leadership dictate culture. But his question was, how do you do that in a virtual environment? So in an environment where we haven't been able to get face-to-face, and we can all throw out things like, well, use Zoom, but there's more to the answer than just that. What have you been experiencing as you've been coaching around that with the companies that you support? How do you engage? How do you select? How do you prepare? And how do you enhance culture virtually?
Well, first of all, my personality is my personality, whether you can see me, whether I'm sitting there next to you, or you're talking to me over the phone. So my personality is who I am. And I think, first of all, I recommend using the Berkman Assessment. People use the Myers-Briggs. I've taken every assessment disc, every one of them. I like the Berkman because it measures where we go in stress. That's one of the most key factors about the Berkman. And I like it. So first of all, I want to get to know who I am working with. So if I'm looking to promote someone or bring someone in and a virtual job in the office, I don't care. I'm going to identify what is their personality type. So number one, I know how to talk to them. Do they like being spoken to in bullet form, or do they like being spoken to in a story form, which is more words? You can almost identify. One's a choleric, one's more of a phlegmatic personality. You want facts, that's more of a someone that's the phlegmatic. As a sanguine person loves the story. The choleric wants the bullet points, and the phlegmatic wants the facts in the story. So when you start identifying who they are, you start learning how to speak to people in an appropriate way, their language that they can receive, and you're going to have a greater success. The other thing is we're using very effectively right now, Patrick Lencioni's 6 types of geniuses. And there's an ideation. There's 2 types of people that work on the ideation side. These are the people that are always wondering. There's a group that works on the implementation side of things, getting things figured out, discerning if it's a good idea. And there's another group, and I'd love to get into it. We don't have time. We probably will at some point in time. But it gets into the get her done group. So there are those that love to think and create. There's loves that love to discern if that's a good idea. And then there are others that says, we don't care about any of that. Just give us a plan and we're going to execute it. They're the get her done ones. And so I think what it is learn who your people are. And it doesn't matter if you're sitting in an office, working from home, and then just have that. So we go in and work with the personality types. We put it up on office walls, on cubes. So we start teaching. If Eric is wired like this. I'm going to have a much more, let's say you're an underwriter and I'm a loan officer. I'm going to have a much greater probability of winning Eric over to look at my file more thoroughly if I learn how to purposely and intentionally talk to Eric in the language that works for him. If you're a phlegmatic, you probably don't care about the whole story. Just get to the facts. What's race is this? What's this? What's this? What's this? And what are the compelling stories? I see this one doesn't fit quite here. So what is it about this? And get it point to the point. And sanguines love telling a whole long story, and it bores the crap out of everybody. So learn that. So that's applicable no matter what the working environment is, in person or virtual. So
that makes sense. Maybe it's the implementation of a little more science, so so to help you with the art when you're having a conversation with someone. It's a little bit easier when you're face to face, and we can spend a few minutes in the office environment, and then we can go get a taco together and talk about things that are personal and not business related. It's a little bit harder when we're on a Zoom call and you and I have a scheduled 30 minutes, and in the 28th minute is when I'm realizing I still need to get something from you, and now we only have 2 minutes to jam through it.
Yep. I think it's building relationships with people, and it needs to invest more in the relationship side of it. And the smartest loan officer, the best, highest producing loan officers that get things done through operations the most effectively are the ones that invested a little bit in that relationship. Have gone online, looked at the Facebook of the underwriter. Hey, I see you got 2 kids. I see they play soccer, and you're a soccer mom. I see this, and just show a little bit of interest. It takes so little to develop a meaningful relationship because so few people do it. So,
David, this is awesome. You're Hall of Fame. Thank you so much for scheduling some time to hang out with me and with Thomas on the walk. I would assume, I mean, so many people know who you are, but Lykken on Lending, Transportational Mortgage Solutions. Yeah.
Transformational Mortgage Solutions. Yep.
I mean, turn on CNBC, whatever. You if you keep looking, you're going to find David in a lot of places. I appreciate you carving out time today. Hey, look, go text your buddy Casey Crawford and tell him that he needs to come on the walk at some point. I'm not far from him. We can set up a studio in Fort Mill.
we've got some texting going on right now, so I will I'll let him know.
Yeah, nudge him a little bit for me. Hey, don't go anywhere just yet. We're gonna hit the stop button. But Dave, thanks for coming on, man. You were great. If there's anything I can do for you, I'll do it on Monday, or you just ask and I'll do it.
We're beginning a real good and a long relationship, meaningful relationship. I'm excited about it, Eric. Thank you.
I love it, my friend. I appreciate you, bud.
Appreciate you too.
Okay.